One guy, though, that I know you're a little bit lower on, and this is where, again, the fantasy versus real life value might kind of diverge, is George Kirby. This is someone who, as far as a Cy Young breakout, sleeper context, people are, blowing this guy up. Oh my God, he's the best strike thrower in baseball, and he's part of this amazing Mariners pitching staff. Where do you kind of see George Kirby, and why are you less enthused about him, at least in a fantasy context?
So fantasy managers love him. They're drafting him as a top 10 fantasy starter ahead of my guy, Tyler Glasnow. Some people even have the temerity to do that. Listen, Kirby was great last year. There's no question about it. But ERA just can fluctuate so much. And I just worry that a guy that misses so few bats, he could have some problems here if this walk rate does regress some. Kirby's 2.5% walk rate last season was the best by a starter in 10 years, since 2014. So that's going to be tough to sustain. Again, drafted as a top 10 fantasy starter, despite ranking 29th in CSW and 30th in K percentage. So projections have him as a low 8 K guy, ERA in the high 3s. It would not surprise me if Kirby finishes like the third or fourth best starter in Seattle. I mean, Jordan, you just wrote about Bryce Miller. What if that cutter gets lefties out and neutralizes them? I think guys like Miller have more fantasy upside than Kirby, who goes way early. Drafting him as a top 10 starter is just based off last year's results in the ERA department, and I worry that can fluctuate so much year to year.
And I would imagine Kirby's ERA number, right, that's going to be a lot more dependent on Seattle's defense. Jordan, do you think that's taken a step back or a step forward with all the turnover they've had on the offensive side?
That's an interesting question. I would say it's probably, third base is a pretty big question mark right now. And Polanco, again, they're trusting a lot in Perry Hill to, sprinkle his infield defense pixie dust on Jorge Polanco, and the guys who are going to be playing at third base. I agree that the defense is a bigger component. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because the one thing I would push back on from you, Dalton, is this is who George Kirby is from a strike throwing standpoint. This dude walked like 3 people in college. If anybody is going to sustain this absurd level of control, it is him. But I think your point about the missing bats is where, again, if we kind of broaden this out to like a Cy Young conversation, I do think that the ERA is going to kind of be fluctuating because he is leaving more up to contact. At the same time, when you see his ability to adjust, his ability to add pitches on the fly, whether it's a splitter, whether it's a knuckleball, whether it's something else, like I could see him finding ways to get more whiffs. But I totally understand that he is probably overrated as long as the strikeouts are more of a, 9 Ks per 9 versus a 10 or 11 or a 12, like you're seeing with guys like Glasnow or even Bryce Miller that we'll see. So I totally with you on that, but I do not expect regression from a command standpoint. I mean, maybe he doesn't have a historic season in terms of throwing strikes, but I do think George Kirby is going to continue to be the best strike thrower in baseball. So that's a good one.